This is the case of Cayler Anthony. A lot of you may be familiar with this case. Some you may not. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and this is Crimes and Confessions, and this is episode 2, and we're covering the killing of Cayler Anthony. On July 15th, 2008, Cayler Anthony was reported missing in a 911 call made by Cindy Anthony, who said that she had not seen Cayler, her granddaughter, for 31 days, and that her daughter, Casey's car, smelled like a dead body had been inside of it. Now, Cindy said Casey had given a few different explanations as to Cayler's whereabouts before finally telling her family that she too had not seen Cayler for weeks. Casey lied to detectives, telling them that her daughter had been kidnapped by a nanny named Zanny on June 9th, and that she had been trying to find her herself, and she was too scared to alert the authorities. After Cindy Anthony had made that 911 call and reported her granddaughter missing, the authorities did come to the house and they spoke with Casey. She gave them a story that the nanny had told her she wasn't getting Cayler back, and it was a whole bunch of lies. She made up a name because she obviously made up the nanny, and said that she was kidnapped by Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, who she identified as Zanny, Cayler's nanny. No one had ever met this nanny named Zanny. None of Casey's friends or family had ever met her. Casey also told the police that she was working at Universal Studios, and that's why she had to have a nanny. But then again, turns out that was also a lie, and that she had been telling her parents for years. Investigators actually took Casey to Universal Studios on July 16th, 2008, the day that Cayler was reported missing, asking her to show them her office where she worked, introduce them to her boss, give her an alibi, and Casey led detectives around the building for 25 minutes before she stopped, started smiling, and jokingly admitted that she had no office there and that she was fired years before. And that was the first time that Cayler Anthony was arrested. It was that day, July 16th, 2008, and she was charged the following day with giving false statements to law enforcement, child neglect, and obstruction of criminal investigation. The judge at that time had denied her bail, saying Casey had shown willful disregard for the welfare of her child. A few days later, on July 22nd, 2008, after a bond hearing, the judge set her bail at $500,000, and a month later, she was released from the Orange County Jail after someone had put up her $500,000 bond. It said it was posted by a nephew of a California bail bondsman named Leonard Padilla in hopes that she would cooperate with authorities and Cayler would be found. Now fast forward about a month, and on August 11th, 12th, and 13th of 2008, a meter reader named Roy Kronk had called the police about a suspicious object that he had found in a forested area near the Anthony residence. In the first instance, he was directed by the sheriff's office to call the tip line, which he did, receiving no return call. On the second time he called the sheriff's office again and eventually was met by 2 police officers. He reported to them that he had seen what appeared to be a skull near a gray bag, and on that occasion, the officers conducted a short search and stated that they did not see anything. A few months later, on December 11th, 2008, the same meter reader, Roy Kronk, called again, and he called the police, told them the same thing, that he had seen a skull near a bag in a wooded area near the Anthony residence. They searched and finally found the remains of a child in a trash bag. Investigation teams recovered duct tape, which was hanging from hair attached to the skull, and some soft tissue was left on the skull. Over the next 4 days, they excavated the area, and more bones were found in the wooded area, near the spot where the remains had initially been discovered. On December 19th, 2008, medical examiner Jan Garavilla, probably said that wrong, confirmed that the remains found were those of Cayler Anthony. The death was ruled a homicide, and the cause of death was listed as unlisted or unknown. Now, Cayler Anthony was indicted by a grand jury on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and 4 counts of providing false information to police. She was arrested, and Judge John Jordan ordered that she be held without bond. The charges of child neglect were dropped against Casey, according to the state's attorney's office, because the evidence proved that the child was deceased. The state sought an indictment on the legally appropriate charges. Anthony was arraigned and pleaded not guilty to all of those charges. On April 13, 2009, prosecutors announced that they planned to seek the death penalty in the case. The case did go to trial, and there was over 400 pieces of evidence that was presented. A strand of hair was recovered from the trunk of Casey's car, which was microscopically similar to the hair taken from Cayler's hairbrush. The strand, though, showed root banding, in which hair roots form a dark band after death, which is consistent with hair from a dead body. During the trial, 700 pages of documents related to the Anthony investigation were released, including records of Google searches of the term neck breaking and how to make chloroform on a computer accessible by Casey, and they were all presented by the prosecution as evidence of a crime. According to the detectives, crime scene evidence included residue of a heart-shaped sticker found on the duct tape over the mouth of Cayler's skull. However, the laboratory was not able to capture a heart-shaped photographically after some of the duct tape was subjected to dye testing. There was a blanket that was recovered at the crime scene that matched Cayler's bedding in her grandparents' home because she had a Winnie the Pooh themed bedroom. There were so many things that pointed to Cayler Anthony as being the person responsible for her daughter's death. And when the trial went on, her defense came up with many different theories and finally landed on one that they said happened, which was little Cayler Anthony had drowned in the family pool, and that Cayler Anthony's father had helped her bury or hide the body, which doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you just call 911? Now, the opening statements for the prosecutor that were made by Linda Burdick describe the story of the disappearance of Cayler Anthony day by day. The prosecution alleged an intentional murder and sought the death penalty against Cayler Anthony. Prosecutor stated that Anthony used chloroform to render her daughter unconscious before putting duct tape over her nose and mouth to suffocate her, and she left Cayler's body in the trunk of her car for a few days before disposing of it. They characterized Anthony as a party girl who killed her daughter to free herself from the parental responsibilities and to enjoy her personal life. And this can be collaborated. She didn't want to have the child, but her parents told her that adoption or abortion was not an option. She didn't know who the father of the child was, and she raised Cayler with the help of her parents. She was a young mom, and she didn't want to be a mom. Now we're going to end this part 1 right here, so make sure that you stay tuned to Crimes and Confessions for episode 3, part 2 of Cayler Anthony, the killing of Cayler Anthony. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below on cases that you would like me to cover, old or new. Bye.